Okay, this is episode 16 of OverSight. Yes, for real this time, a weekly show about Overwatch. Not all like all those lies. I know, listen, guys, I know it's going to take a long time to build that trust again. I know there was an episode, I think it was about 6 months ago, Monty, where we said, like, oh, could you do this a lot more regularly? And then I don't believe there was another episode for about 2 months or something. So we've lied in the past, but this time, well, here's the thing. Maybe I didn't lie. Maybe I just took a page out of the book of Old Blizzard, and I was like, it'll definitely start, that OverSight podcast will start in quarter 3 of 2017. And then obviously, listen, there was complications. I had my own team of people I have to verify everything by, you know. I call them team banter. They have to say yes on everything, you know, even if I tell them, oh, maybe you should do it differently. So we're here finally. We're back for another week. In fact, actually, I think we did this episode only a few days ago, wasn't it? Wasn't it like about 5 days ago or something?
Tuesday, yeah. We're going to try and get it out on Sundays, though, so that it's easier to watch.
Yeah, not bad, right?
Not bad at all.
I
would like to, special shout out to the CSGO Major, to E-League for not inviting Thorin to be on that, so that we can have this here instead. And, you know, you'd be casting right now otherwise. So it's good that we can actually just do it on this Sunday.
All I'm going to say, Monty, is, did you see that the CSGO Major... Actually, no, it was the NALCS actually had lower viewership than the first week of the Overwatch League.
I'm not going to comment on that.
I haven't seen the viewership on the major.
I'm going to sit here and say I would never be so petty as to comment or read too much into that.
I would,
you know what I mean?
On the other hand, okay. But here's the thing. I also don't think the CSGO majors had the biggest numbers yet. I'm not certain on that one. But, you know, I'm just going to be incredibly petty and imply maybe it's because I'm not there. So even though, as a real intellectual statement, that holds no correlation whatsoever. And I've been at plenty of majors that didn't have the best numbers ever. But just saying, you know.
But you don't know. Those majors could have had worse viewership if you weren't there. So, you know.
No, could never have known, exactly. So all I can go off is a really poorly put together, quite petty analysis of the situation. So I will. So okay, it's episode 15, and our guest for this week, because we've got one of those players, Monty, you know, where people are always telling us, you've got to get on a Korean player. Like, we almost never did it in League of Legends, actually. In League of Legends, if you notice, even though there was plenty that had really good English, like there was people like Rush who had fucking amazing English, you know. I've even talked to that guy, and I've even talked to that guy, and then him tell me, oh, my English isn't good enough. And I'm like, I'm talking to you right now. You have really good English. And he was like, no, but I might get nervous if I come on the show, you know. And I was like, oh, whatever. But luckily, Monty doesn't care for such concerns as whether or not a player feels nervous or doesn't want to come on the show. He just goes through people's management and then books them on the show. And then here's the good part. Monty's figured out Koreans, because he knows that if someone higher up in the organization says to the Korean player, could you please go on this show? They'll probably just come on the show. So I was wrong all along, Monty. I was trying to give people freedom of choice, you know, get people who really wanted to come on the show. You cracked it. You've got the solution. And now we've got Koreans on the show. So well done to you, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I'm quite thrilled. It's KuKi. He's here. He's here to be loved by fans, and it is rare that we actually do get a. So here's the rarity, Duncan.
Yes,
we get a Korean player on a Korean team, and because I stopped doing Summoning Insight before Huni got on SK Telecom, which may have been our only chance, I think, to get like a Korean player on a really high level Korean team. We're really lucky to have KuKi here, because they're looking like one of, if not the best team in Overwatch League right now. They are the Seoul team, and he is a fluent English speaker.
Yes. So, okay. Hello, KuKi. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, hello, but I'm not that fluent, as you said.
I think if you can say the phrase, I'm not that fluent, then it sounds like you're fairly fluent.
It's so unlucky that you know so much about Korea.
See, I know how to work the system.
You know so much about the system.
Okay. So, let's start with your team then, KuKi. Tell us some stuff about your team, because here's the thing. I know your team when it was Lunatic High. So as a result, well, KuKi wasn't really part of Lunatic High, really, right? So
no, he's part of MVP Space.
So what's it been like joining this team that at one point in time was the best Korean team, and you got your chance to join them as a result of coming to the Overwatch League? What's it been like joining a different team?
Of course, it's really good just being a teammate with really top players like Yu Jae-young and Fleta, and I mean all of the players. And it feels sometimes like being a strong bad guy in the league. You know what I mean?
What do you mean
You're
being a strong
just
bad
wearing
guy?
black, being intimidating.
Yeah.
People think you're a villain.
Yeah. It like seems like we're some bad guys. They all want to beat us, and it's like it feels like that sometimes.
Sure, but it's
You like
fun.
that feeling?
Isn't it
I
fun
like
when
that
people
feeling. I like being the villain. We both,
Makes it
both
better.
Thorin and I like being the villain. Do you enjoy it?
Yeah, enjoy it, but I think it's the hard part to be the likable team, being strong and being likable.
Okay. Right.
I think that's
true.
the main goal.
Yeah, it's true. That is obviously that's actually one of the few things that I guess is like a slight downside so far in Overwatch is that obviously because the Overwatch League is only taking place in LA. Yeah, most of the fans who go to the stadium on the day are probably going to be supporting whatever team you're playing, Dallas or Houston or LA.
That's actually not true. I've seen so many Seoul Dynasty jerseys in the crowd, and plus there's also the fact that LA has a huge Korean population. It has like the largest number of Koreans outside of Korea, so there's actually quite a few
wait a minute,
fans.
I've got it wrong then, Monty. He's going the other way on that one. He's like, why aren't I universally loved? I should be loved by all. How can anyone cheer against me? He's already got fans in the stadium and he's winning the game. He's complaining and he's winning the game. What's this? Okay. Was it intimidating though to join a team? I mean, you're a tank player, so you're joining a team with people like Mira and stuff. No, people who are very, very highly rated.
Yeah. I learned from him a lot, and it really helps me to improve myself too.
Okay. Because actually, one thing that Monty always used to say when we were covering the Apex League on the old episodes was he thought that the West had very good DPS players, you know, Taimu, whoever you want, Shadowburn. But he always used to say Korea has the best of like the supports and the tanks, though. So what I want to know is there any supports and tanks in the West from an Overwatch League that have impressed you? Has anyone caught your eye?
From the tanks, I think Muma.
Okay, yeah. Wasn't he the one we saw playing Doomfist, Monty? Was that who it was?
No, he plays like
Hydration.
He plays like Winston. He plays on the Outlaws, plays with a cool map.
Okay. Anyone else?
And Shaz from support.
Shaz, yes, from Gladiators, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So when you talk about Muma, what is it about his tank play that you like watching? What is his style?
He plays really sneaky. He hides a lot. He goes around the back line. It's a really different style from other Winstons.
Sure.
So he can surprise people. Do you want to be more sneaky like him? Has he taught you some spots to hide in?
Yeah, I saw some spots he hides, and I didn't see that kind of Winstons that sneak a lot and hide like that. He just literally almost hides every time.
Did you see this? There was an interesting stat recently, KuKi, where the player Poco from the Philadelphia Fusion has some like unbelievable number of self-destruct kills on Diva. Like somehow he's got like 3 times more than anyone else, you know. And every single clip, he's getting like like 2 or 3 people every single time. Have you seen this? Have you seen him managing to do this?
Yeah, I've seen him in the games, in the matches, and I also saw him in his stream.
Okay.
Because everyone knows he's really good at using his ult. Yeah. And our divas watch him too.
Why do you think he's so good though? Because that's the thing. Like, you know, it's not like he was just very good and the others are also good. His stats were so much higher at the moment. It seems like he's figured something out no one else has, right?
Yeah, I think it's because he just works hard trying to find the spots or try to, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, he said that he so what you can do is if you go into a custom game in Overwatch, you can set your ult to charge instantaneously. So probably he said on Twitter that he's been practicing like finding all the spots. So he'll probably just go into an empty map and then like shoot them, ult over and over and over again. Because the way he does it is he knows all the spots where it like will hit a wall and then like slowly slide up. So like you can't see it until it like shoots up and then like instantly explodes. So if around a corner, it'll like slide around a corner. So if you know the angles and the spots to aim in which to do that, then you're going to be able to surprise people because they'll hear the ult, but they won't see it until it actually just like blows up right in their face. So he said that he's been practicing that on the maps, and I think he's one of the only Diva players to have put that kind of time in to figure that out. And he's being rewarded for it. I mean, he's playing super well.
Must also have a really good intuitive sense for where people are as well. Like, because the thing is, it actually reminds me of, if you remember in the early days, because obviously like Junkrat wasn't played that early in the Overwatch Apex seasons. People never used to use that very much. But now almost every player who plays Junkrat is like super good at getting the Riptire to actually like explode near people. Like everyone's sort of figured out roughly sort of the path to take and where to go. So I think eventually people will surely catch up and kind of be similar. But if this guy really has some amazing sense for where to make the ult explode, maybe he'll still be the best. Maybe that'll just be his specialty or something.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of who puts in the time in order to do that, because obviously on every map you have to know a lot of those angles and practice it on your own. So I think more players will start doing stuff like that.
Okay. Like KuKi, since you're in the Seoul Dynasty, I mean, first of all, it's the Korean team in the Korean city. So everyone's expecting, they got Lunatic Eye. It's supposed to be the best team in the world, because the best Korean team, if you've ever watched the show before, it's supposed to be the best team in the world. That's what everyone expects. Is there a lot of pressure? Do you think you are the best team?
Yeah, of course it's a big pressure for us, because like everyone's calling us like a pre-champion or something. But I think all of the teams are the pre-champions because they are really good, and the West teams are good as well. Yeah, really.
I love that sentence. Okay, yeah, keep going. Yeah,
and
I know what you meant, mate. It's okay.
Yeah, and I think we're the best team because the season is going on, and the champion is the best team.
Yes, agreed. Okay.
So one thing I want to talk about your role within the team. So you play with Miro, who's a player who's a lot younger than you are. So people might not know, but KuKi is 27. So he's the same age as Jae-hong. And that means you're one of the Hyungs, the older brothers on the team. So you do have a role as sort of an emotional leader with the team, right? Is that one of the reasons why they wanted to pick you up?
I think so, maybe. I think so. Because the age means nothing here, but in Korea, it does mean a bit. So I think there's a role for me about that kind of stuff. But I don't feel like that's the main role to me, though. So what is the main role for you when you talk about? So for example, last week you played one of the matches up against Florida Bayhem. And then against Boston, we saw Miro play one of those matches. So when does the team want to use you, and when does the team want to use Miro? I'm not sure, because that's the coach's thoughts.
You never asked? You never said, hey, why are you putting me in? Okay, let me ask the question differently. Yeah. When you play with the team, what are the differences between you and Miro?
Me and Miro are different in like when we're playing Winston.
Okay.
I like calculating things, and he's just like a real monster, real monkey.
So you're saying you like being more you like thinking before you make the plays, and he is more instinctive. Like he feels the play.
He's more instinctive, and he really makes things different with his mechanical things.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I'm a little different.
I like your brain more.
Yeah.
So one of you is the gorilla and one of you is the scientist, right?
like something like a Homo sapien or something.
Yes, human. Yes. Correct. Yeah, we don't have to use the Latin phraseology of the philology or whatever it is. But okay. So let me ask you this then. So even though you kind of said that very nice thing, like, all the teams are the pre-champions and even the Western teams are very good as well, even though you made this caveat, KuKi, your team has only lost one map in all the ones you've played. It's going pretty well, right?
Yeah, we were lucky.
I don't think you can be lucky that many times in a row. I've seen the other teams. No one's had that much luck, mate.
To be fair, like Seoul also hasn't had as hard of a schedule as a lot of other teams. So the teams that they played are Dallas, which it was a very close match. And Dallas has struggled. They played against LA Gladiators. They played against Boston Uprising. And then they played against the Florida Mayhem. So they haven't played. So next week, though, you guys have a really big match against New York, right? This is like the first really, really huge match for you. But you haven't played any of the other like really good teams, right? So have you been, as a result, you've been changing your roster a lot, and you tell me things like, oh, the coaches decide that, but you have to know something. So what are you trying? Is the team experimenting right now to figure out different strategies with different players in the roster?
Yeah, I think we're trying to experiment things, and it's like the first time we got these many people in the team. And of course, it's the first time we got so many coaches in our team. So we're just like experimenting things before the tough matches. Okay. I think so.
Okay. Because you're interesting because, for example, you guys have used every player in your roster. All the players have played. But London said, no, we have 12 players, but we will just play 6. And then in the first week. And then this week we saw those 6 and then Rascal and Fisher play. So they have been really slow to add new players, but you have been changing everything around. Do you think that's because you always have, Jae-hong and Toby? Are they shot calling so they can help the other players integrate into the team?
The shot calling, before we had some guys specifically doing that, but we're like, all the players are doing that now. So it doesn't matter about that. I think just experimenting matters a lot more than that kind of things.
So when everybody's shot calling, have your coaches said, okay, this is the style of shot calling we will do, so it's the same no matter which players are in the game? Is there a system for the shot calling?
Yeah, we're trying to do that. Trying to practice the kind of system we made, and we're practicing in that kind of stuff. And there is though a main shot caller, because that difference between me and Miro has that kind of stuff too. Because I make most of the shot calls when I play, and Miro's like playing more instinctively without the shot calls.
Okay, so who shot calls when Miro plays?
Any other players.
Okay. So were you shot calling on MVP space? Was that your job?
Yeah, that was it. That was my main role there. So it helped me a lot to practice there.
So when you say shot calling, do you call targets? Do you say, kill this player? Or do you say, we need to change our strategy, you need to switch from Ana to Zenyatta? Do you say we need to change the team composition, or do you do both?
Yeah, I mostly do both. The focus and the strategy, the way we get in or way we defense, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, since, as I mentioned before, the only team that won a map off your team, and it came close to maybe getting 2 maps, I remember in that series, was Dallas Fuel. And Dallas Fuel at the moment hasn't won a match. They are 0-4. Why was Dallas Fuel so tough for you, do you think?
On the previous match?
The first game
the first game of the season. You were not playing.
Yeah, I wasn't playing there, so.
Okay.
I don't really remember.
Don't you remember? You lost Junkertown. I'm sure you were in the dugout watching this, and then you had the draw, or you had the very close Temple of Anubis, the 6 versus 5. Do you remember they were running Lucio on Temple of Anubis with Orisa and Roadhog, and they were running onto the point?
First
point.
I remember.
And there was Effect and Fleta fighting on the Widowmaker versus Widowmaker. It's probably the best map we've seen. It was the most fun map for me to watch so far. And then you won Ilios 2-0 very easily, and then you had a draw on Numbani for the last map. So when you came into that game, obviously you or Lunatic High, let's say, has beaten Envy in the past, but Lunatic High and Envy are both Apex champions. This was did you think this was going to be a hard match?
Yeah, of course we thought it's going to be a hard match, but it was our first match.
Yes.
So we couldn't prepare that. We had to more adjust to the league, the matches. So I think that kind of stuff matters that time. And Dallas was just really good in the match, I think.
Okay. Well, what do you think about them generally as a team then? Because like I say, at the moment, they've lost all their matches. Like, it would be okay if they lost to your team because your team's supposed to be one of the best. But they've lost to teams like they got beaten 4-0 by Houston. So they've had some matches that were not very convincing. Now, obviously, one of the things we've mentioned on this show before is they're a team who doesn't play dive. They don't do that style of play. So, like, what do you think? Because obviously some of their players are good, but they're having trouble in the league. What do you think of them as a team at the moment?
I don't think the teams have a lot of styles. I mean, the defensive style using the Orisa and Hog, and the aggressive diving style. Yeah. I don't know which one's better because it's just the styles, and I think Dallas is preferring more the defensive style, and maybe it's because of the picks they can make, the combination they can make with the heroes and the players.
Okay.
Yeah, it's because, they don't have a good Genji player right now. I think Seagull is practicing, but they can't play Tracer Genji. They tried against Houston, but they're not very good at it. So it seems to me like they have their own strategies, but the problem is that every team, I think, should be able to play Tracer Genji, because it always works. Any map, you can always play it, no matter what happens.
If you look at the last few weeks, every single week, there are tons of highlight clips of the Genjis just getting like mega multi-kills in big fights. So yeah, it's clearly mega effective right now.
Yeah,
and I don't
change. When you guys play.
Yeah, So when Dallas, they have good strategies that don't use Tracer or Genji, but when they start getting countered, they can't change to Tracer or Genji. But you can always do that. Do you think when you play with Seoul, are there times where you say, no, we just need to go Tracer Genji right now because we need to change our strategy, but this always works on every map?
Yeah, I think that's a good part of our team because we can do that. We can change all the time to other comps. So that's a good part of our team.
It's nice to have a luxurious team that's got so many good players in, right?
So I want to talk to you a little bit about, because you say you can play all these different strategies. So one player that lets you do that is Fleta. And Fleta has been playing incredibly well. So, I mean, amazing.
Yeah.
And I actually had a conversation with Kevin Chu, who is your team's owner, the other day. And I walked up to him and I said, even you could not have known that Fleta would be this good, because he was on a not very good team before with Flash Lux. And he was good on that team, but you could not have known what his skill ceiling was with really good players. And he has looked way better than I thought he ever could have looked, right?
Yeah.
So you used to play, on MVP space against Flash Lux. Did you ever practice against Flash Lux with Fleta?
Yeah, of course. We practiced a lot because it seemed like a similar level in the Apex, because MVP and the Flash Lux was always in the lowest part.
Indeed, yes.
That's true.
So,
We remember.
so we practiced a lot against Fleta, and we all said he's just so good, but he should be not in that team.
Why do you think he didn't get picked up by one of the bigger teams then? Because, for example, your team now, Seoul Dynasty, when it was Lunatic High, used to be famous for having kind of just okay DPS players, not necessarily star players. So why do you think he wasn't on one of the top teams already?
I think I'm not sure, but maybe the contract problem or
Oh.
I'm not sure.
He's not saying there was, but there could have been.
Yeah, possibly.
Okay. Right.
So with that, so you used to practice against Fleta, and so when you joined the team around the same time Fleta did you join before Fleta? Were you signed before Fleta with Seoul? Did you recommend him, or did you try out with him?
Yeah, before I came in the team, I had a test too. I tried. I played a game with him in the test, and that's it. I don't remember.
So how is it to play with Fleta now? As a tank player, what do you do to help Fleta? So when you play your match and you know that this guy's really good, how does your style help his style?
It's like I just really trust in him, so it makes me feel like I don't have to kill all the people. I just like try to zone our team so that Fleta can kill neither than me.
Okay, but you also tell him which heroes to play, right? You're the one who makes the strategies in the game.
Yeah, but the picks we change the picks independently, mostly, but the style we play, we make the calls. So, and mostly he helps me with that call, so it's not that difficult playing with him.
It's not that difficult, yes. Well, some would say it's very good to play with him, but
I believe he's really fucking good.
Yeah, okay. It's certainly one way to describe it. Okay. So, since you haven't played any of the other Korean teams, and as Monty says, this week you're going to play against New York Excelsior, which of the other two Korean teams do you think is the best?
I don't know, because they're both really good, and I think the style of the two teams are different.
Okay.
But New York is more good at the defensive style, and they really run the Orisa Hog really well, and I think London is more aggressive, and they are really good at it too.
Okay. Right. So far in the Overwatch League, they've always put Pine in on the control maps. Yeah. And at the moment, he's just beating up all these Western players, these white guys, wrecking them all, making all these highlight clips. But a really good Korean team like Seoul Dynasty is going to shut him down if he plays on the control map, right?
Well, I don't know. We have to try.
What?
Isn't that your job?
That's the confidence.
Yeah, they got Pine, but we got Fleta, so...
What do you mean they've got Fleta? It's someone who plays, let's say a hero like a Winston could maybe jump on him while he's trying to kill everyone. Therefore, you could shut him down, right?
I'll just try to help, and I think it's a game DPS vs DPS, so...
Oh, okay. Okay. Why do you think that is then? Why is it more DPS versus DPS then?
Well, it's just saying... The tank and support say DPS. It's a DPS game.
You know what's funny about that, by the way, is when we had Taimu on the episode 2 episodes ago, he was like, DPS players, we don't really decide anything in the game. It's more how good our tanks and supports are. It's all about them. They decide the game, I see how this is working now, Monty. Everyone just passes the buck off to someone else. It's a team game.
Are you really surprised? Are you really surprised?
Not really, no, but it is ridiculous.
Every time.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's funny.
It's just a team game.
No, that's why I think it's funny, though, because, for example... Like, okay, so in League of Legends, I used to play in the top lane sometimes, right? Because my favorite player was a top lane player, and I actually hated it when it became tanks is what you had to play there. But when you had to play tanks, so I could play something like Shyvana or something, what I would do all day long is I used to actually really love the fact that tanks go versus the players who were the carry players, the DPS players, because I would just literally, my pleasure in the game was to ruin the game of a really good Vayne player, for example, and just jump all over him and put a Randuin's Omen on him and just make it so annoying that I knew if I was him, I'd be like, what the fuck is this? Get him off me. Peel. Like, that was the most fun I could have at that point because I couldn't enjoy the game myself anymore. I couldn't carry the game, but I could at least ruin his game. Isn't that kind of the point of being a tank?
Yeah, I think that's my style. It's like I'm not playing like I'm gonna kill you, you DPS. I'm not gonna kill you. It's like I'm gonna make my DPS kill your DPS.
Aha!
Okay.
Now we're
There we
going
go.
somewhere.
That's good. I like that. It's a good tagline.
So you're distracting. You want to be annoying and distracting so that they attack you or make a mistake so your DPS can kill them.
Yeah.
He wants to put the other DPS player in like the Sinatra position where it's like, oh, I wasn't me who got beaten by the other DPS. It's not my support wasn't helping me properly. Oh, this is unfair. Stop looking at the kills, guys. Look at the game, the nuance and that's great. Okay, what were you going to say, KuKi?
Yeah, I might say that too. Like, if we lose, I distracted them, and what are our DPS doing?
That's good. I like that. Okay.
So coincidentally, I was actually at dinner with KuKi last night because we were filming like a segment where Doa and I went out to have dinner with KuKi and Munchkin and Fleta and Jaehong.
Okay. Where did you go for dinner?
We went to an Italian restaurant, but it was for the Watchpoint show, so you guys can look forward to that. We talked to them for a while, but I got to learn a bunch of interesting stuff about KuKi, which I think explains, like, for example, so you grew up internationally, right? So your English came from the fact that you lived in Hungary, interestingly, like when you were a kid.
All right.
Yeah, when I was like 5.
So, but you left. How old were you when you left Hungary?
Well, I was 11 when I left there.
But you still remember all this English. Did you use it at all between 11 and 27?
There was no opportunity to use it, so I really didn't use it for like 15 years or more. I'm just trying to remember it from then.
But it's pretty impressive.
You're doing a good job, yeah.
Yeah, but everyone says like I learned my English when I was so young. I like my English hears like a child.
Okay.
What I mean?
I don't think that's true, but I think you remember and you understand a lot. Has being in America helped you with? Do you feel like you can learn it very quickly now?
Yeah, because I have to use my English more often, and these kind of shows I have to talk with you. I know
it's horrible.
Yeah, I gotta practice.
Okay.
So it's my wish is to just improve my English, and we go to the championship, we win, and I do the last interview with my perfect English.
So I wanted to bring this up because you told me something that probably can't or won't be put on the show because we were talking about other games that you played. And also just Thorin's comment about top lane reminded me because you wanted to be a pro gamer and you played League of Legends, right? But you were telling me that Marin was your favorite player. Yeah. So were you a top laner?
I was when I was bronze, and I changed to AD carry. I went to the master tier.
Oh, okay.
But the role of Marin was like the role model for me because he was the oldest brother there in SKT when he was in SKT, and he like, I don't know, he looked cool to me.
I mean, but he's very similar to you now. He was the older player on the team. You've already done your military service. He's already done his military service. So you do have, you have the age and the maturity and the leadership qualities, right?
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. because I am the oldest here with Jaeyoung, but I'm not that kind of like bossy.
You don't have to, to be
yeah, I like just playing with my teammates, like in the same, trying to be younger, to act younger.
Okay.
So I wanted to. So you played up to Master Tier in League of Legends.
One of the few Overwatch players where it's actually acceptable for you to act younger. A lot of the other ones need to act older, mate. So it's okay for you. You can have a pass. Okay.
So you used to play League of Legends. So when you changed to Overwatch, what League of Legends skills helped you be good at Overwatch and become a professional Overwatch player?
I'm not sure, but maybe that game helps me more than playing FPS, I think, because it's more similar to AOS games.
Yes.
This Overwatch game, because more to tanks, especially because using the ults or maybe team fights, the roles, I think, helps me.
Yeah, those are the two areas where I actually see more similarity to a MOBA type game or an Aeon Strife game, as apparently Koreans refer to it as, than an FPS. Because in an FPS, even though you might have players, for example, in Counter-Strike, who we might say play a supportive role, they still carry the same weapon as anyone else, and they still, in theory, can kill someone the same way, and there's obviously no concept of a tank, I mean, occasionally in Counter-Strike, you might get a player, for example, who runs in as the bait, and sort of tanks damage a bit, but still, it's not the same. Whereas in League of Legends, obviously, yes, we all understand these concepts of the different roles have to interact in a certain way to make actually certain roles stronger, like as you were saying about DPS players. If you don't have a good tank player, a DPS player is not going to look that good, and he's probably not going to get as many kills, and then people might say, oh, he had a bad game, but maybe he didn't have someone peeling for him or harassing the other DPS player to make it harder, So, yeah, I can see the similarities in that sense, That's why I think Overwatch is a very unique game, because for me, it actually blends the two types of game in a way I've never seen before, FPS and the MOBA style. Okay. What, is there any other information that you got out of him, Monty? In the pre-interview, apparently, that he didn't know was happening.
Sure. I mean, I did. I don't want to blow everything, but so but you always wanted to be a pro gamer. You were saying to us, right? You tried to go to college.
Yeah, I was in college.
And you were studying. What were you studying?
I was studying electric
engineering.
Yeah, that's why he wears Winston. He's got the lightning gun. Yeah, he knows all about that. Yeah, exactly. No problem.
But you were just playing games, right? And you weren't doing very well.
Yeah, I wasn't even going to school for 3 terms.
Okay.
So I was actually expelled once time.
Oh, what? Why? He's a bad boy. What the hell? Okay. Just for not attending, you mean? Not having enough attendance?
Yeah, but just playing games all the time. And my parents got mad, and I thought to myself, yeah, I have to now go to school and act as a normal person. So I went back to school.
Yeah.
I tried to behave, but I couldn't.
Games are too fun, aren't they?
Yeah,
it's just too much fun.
I got back to school, but Overwatch came out, and it made me play games again. So.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. If you win Overwatch League Season 1, you just go to your parents and your family and you say, look, I've graduated from Overwatch. This is this is Overwatch League. This is like Seoul University. Look at this. I've got a first-class degree. I've won it. That'd be pretty good, right?
Yeah, but in Korea, we have to, it's like everyone thinks that we have to graduate college.
Yes.
So in the future, I think I have to graduate, though.
You have to go back to college? You're going to do that after your Overwatch career?
Yeah.
Oh my
God.
God.
Gonna take your $1 million of prize winnings and go back to college? Fuck that, man.
I don't know, because my parents wants me to graduate, though.
Well, no, here's the thing though, Monty. That would be a pretty cool story if you have to go back to college and then, because first of all, people are going to say like, oh, why are you coming back? You're a lot older now. And you're like, oh, I was just off becoming a world champion in a game called Overwatch. Have you ever heard of it? And everyone's heard of it in Korea. So then all the girls are like, oh my God, a renaissance man. He's the learned man of education, but he's also a champion in this video game. Sounds pretty appealing to me. I'm already in.
I got to think about it in the future, but I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
But did you do your military service yet?
You're not. Yeah, he did his military service.
Ah, he did.
Yeah,
already.
I did.
Okay.
Where did you do it?
In Cheonnam.
What job did you get?
It's like a special force there. 특전사. It's like, I don't know how to say it. 특전사를 뭐라 그러지?
Were you a sniper?
I'm not sure what I would say. It's like a special force there in Korea, like a Navy SEAL or something. But
so you're like the best soldier.
Excuse me, really?
Yeah, but I was just a soldier there, not a 간부.
Yep. You were in the special forces. That's pretty good.
How did you get that posting? Did you take tests?
Yeah, I got tests and nothing. It's not hard to get in there though.
Okay. I'm waiting for the days in the future because here's the thing, okay, right? You know the StarCraft player Bisu, Kim Tae-young? You know this player? He's quite a famous Protoss player for StarCraft 1.
Yeah.
Yes. So he just went to the military now, right? And there was a story came out where he was in StarCraft Brood War. He was very famous for having very good mechanical skill. He was really good, like micro. And when he just went to the army now, he just won a medal for sniping. Like they put him as a sniper and his accuracy was so good, he won like a gold medal, right? So here's the thing, I'm waiting for the day in the future, since Korea embraces games more and more, that in the future, 10 years from now, what will happen is when you have to go to the military, they will say, right, give me your rank in all these games, Overwatch, League of Legends, and then PUBG, when you give them your rank, they'll be like, right, we're going to put this guy straight into Special Forces, he's been Challenger in all these games, like that'll happen one day. I think that's my theory, that's where Korea's military will get more advanced. And if you were like a gold player or something, they'll be like, you can clean up. We need janitors, we need a guy who can get the chicken for everyone. That's the future of Korea, I think.
They already win all those gold medals at the Olympics for accuracy, for shooting and stuff like that every year.
Surprise me, yeah. I mean, obviously very good at practicing specific things, right? Over and over. Except, here's the one thing though, KuKi. So far, no Korean player is good at doing the diva destruct as Poco. So every Korean diva player, we're calling you out now. Get in that practice server, practice that ult as much as you can, because this French guy is showing you all up right now.
Yeah, but I think everyone in different roles do that stuff, kind of practice.
Sure.
Like Winston's finds where to hide or where to jump, and the DPS like shooting this AI Lucios all the time and that kind of stuff. So I think all the divas gonna do that.
Yes.
That practice.
Okay. So what do you think then about... So we earlier on we were talking before we got sidetracked about the fact you're going to be playing the New York Excelsior. Now what's weird is when I've watched this team play, and I actually was a fan of the team they were in before, like Luxury Watch Blue, where I used to like to watch them just because they had really skilled players. And I'm not super knowledgeable about the games. I'm like every fan out there. I just like to watch the fireworks. I like to watch the crazy kills, So when I watch this team now, it still reminds me of the same team because they have all these really good individual players. But then in terms of like teamwork or like set strategies, they don't look like they have that many. What do you think of this team, New York Excelsior?
I'm not sure, but I think they're gonna do better than you have seen before.
Okay.
Because they got more better players now, and their teamwork's getting better, and they're a really good team.
Do the Korean teams practice each other a lot?
Yeah, we do.
But not this week, obviously, because you're playing them.
Yeah, we're gonna play them next week.
So you're not practicing this week. So when you practice against New York, so you've been playing against New York in your scrims. One thing that I notice is that all their players are very good individually, but sometimes they use ults at the wrong times, or they don't use like Transcendence. Jonak gets a lot of Transcendence because he does a lot of damage, but they don't use Transcendence or Valkyrie, the Mercy ult, very efficiently in these fights. Do you think that is a weakness of their playstyle?
I don't know if it's a weakness, but it's a part of their playstyle.
So misusing ults is not a weakness. This guy's been massively media trained. He's good, isn't he? He knows what he's doing, man. What he didn't mention was when he was at university, he used to do a side course in political theory and public speaking. It's impressive how you can dodge questions like that. So when you watch New York, which ways do you think Seoul is better than New York? And which ways do you think New York is better than Seoul? So you can answer real questions this time because you're saying strengths of both teams, okay?
Okay. They are really good at the defensive style.
Mm-hmm. Like you said, with Orisa, Roadhog?
Yeah, Orisa, Hog, and I think we're a little more aggressive than York. I think the style is just different. They're just good at defense. We're better at attack. And we don't know who's gonna win because we attack, they defend. So I mean, sooner or later they have to play attack as well. But never mind that part. Okay, let me ask you this then. You said before, it's just a DPS game now. Some people would say maybe they have better DPS players than Seoul Dynasty. What do you think of that? I think both of our team are really good. They got good DPS players, and we got some too. And we got players that can play a lot of roles, a lot of different heroes. Okay. And we can change them a lot, and they have them also. Okay. So when I think about your DPS, so I think you have one player that typically plays Tracer, right? Or Tracer and maybe McCree. So you have, say, Munchkin or Bunny on that role. And then you have Fleta, who plays Widowmaker, and he plays everything else. Genji, whatever you need. Yeah. And same with New York. So they have Sabielby, who plays Tracer, McCree, Widowmaker, and then they have Libero, who plays everything else. Yeah. And Sabielby, to me, is a better Tracer player than your Tracer players, but Fleta is a better sort of flex DPS than Libero is. So to me, it's sort of almost even because I see, each team I think has one better player in that category. Yeah. Do you think that, but right now we are seeing less Tracer play, so not so much Tracer anymore. Do you think having a great Tracer is necessary for a team still? Yeah, I think so, because in almost all of the maps, Tracer is like we need Tracer in almost all of the maps, but I don't know if there's a better player like looking into individually, but the teamwork is more important. So, because you think that we have Munchkin and Bunny as a Tracer player, but I think all of our DPS can play Tracer very well. It's like we just practice it that way because it's more better that way. Just practicing, we put someone mainly as a Tracer, and someone changes the other characters. But yeah, I think a good Tracer makes a strong team. Okay. But I mean, the teamwork is more important with the Tracers too. So I'm curious, when we talk about teamwork, we actually don't know anything about your practice schedule. So how many scrims do you do a day? So when you practice with Seoul, so you say you have today off, except for me making you do this interview. But tomorrow you'll go back to practice. So you wake up at what? You have to wake up at 10, right? 10, yeah, 10. Okay. And then what happens? So what is your day like? We we wake up, we take a shower, eat our breakfast, then we practice like in competitive. Then we get like 2 or 3 scrims, and we come back to our gaming house, and then I think all of our players like do extra practice
afterwards. So just more competitive queue. So you say 2 or 3 scrims. What happens when do you review your past matches? Do your coaches to say, we are watching our last game and this is the problems that we had?
Yeah.
Okay. When you scrim, do they also record all of the scrims and say, everybody sits down and says, these are the problems that we're having?
Yeah.
So what are the main things that improve your teamwork? Is it the review?
Yeah, mostly the review helps, and we have 3 coaches, and they are really great, and they talk to us a lot individually too. The big problems and the small parts to us, so that we know, and we can change all the small parts too.
So when I talked to Seoul before the season, they got one of the coaches from GC Busan coming over, and I was told that he was going to be mostly the tanks coach. Is that true? So you have like 3 coaches, and one of them's for tanks, and one of them's for DPS, and one of them's for support. Yeah. So you have the GC Busan coach helping you. What has he taught you? About being a good tank? Because you're the only team that has like position coaches like this, if that makes sense, that I know of.
Yeah, we're just trying things, like trying to make that thing roll like the tank coach or something. And we're trying and changing things a lot. Okay,
but he used to coach Gesture, and Gesture became a very good tank during Apex Season 4. And I think he was the MVP of the finals. I thought he played very well in the finals. Yeah. So has this new coach taught you many things about your tank play? Has he been helpful for you?
Yeah, of course. He taught me a lot. Yeah.
So tell me one thing he taught you, so that you have to teach me something about Winston that he taught you.
He likes very aggressive Winstons.
Does that help with your style?
Yeah, I changed a bit because I was more defensive. I liked zoning more than like diving, but he taught me about a lot of things, like more aggressive things.
So what did he teach you about diving? He said you need to play more aggressive. How did he say that? What is a trick he taught you? So when do you dive in now? So before you would say, oh no, I don't want to dive in. But now you say, okay, I will dive in this situation. What is a situation where you will dive in now?
I'm not sure, but I think it's a secret.
I see.
There we go. Okay. He's cracked the code, mate. You can't beat him now.
Now we're into coaching and coaching secrets. That's why I didn't ask you about your communication or teamwork, system, because I know you weren't going to tell me that either.
Okay. Let me ask you this then, Monty. So who do you think will win the match between Seoul Dynasty and New York Excelsior?
It's really hard for me to say because I think he can't say anything about this. I think New York has been playing more seriously than Seoul has. I think a lot of the experimentation that Seoul has done has been because they have had a weaker strength of schedule so far. And even within the games themselves that they're playing, a lot of times it looks like it's like 30 seconds left in the map and they kind of just sit together and be like, all right, we're not fucking around anymore. And then they just win on the last push or whatever. So I feel like it's hard to get a gauge of Seoul's strength because they've played more close matches with teams that are not as strong as the teams that New York has played. And I think New York is not pulling punches. And I think that I've seen some weaknesses in their style that I think are real weaknesses, like I said about their ults, although that was better in their last match. So I think it's hard for me to get a read. We're going to see if Seoul has been deceptive in terms of hiding, their skill or not. Because I think if you look at both teams' performances and take them at face value, you'd say maybe New York has an edge. But I look at Seoul's performance and I say, are they really trying right now? And so I'll probably take Seoul unless I'm going to go back and review some of these games, but unless something really changes my mind.
Okay. Because, when I watched the games that New York played, like I said, some of the players looked amazing, but that's exactly where, from knowing team games, a really good team beats individuals like that most times. So I actually think that Seoul will win because I don't think that you'll see Pine just looking like he's in a free-for-all DM, just killing everyone with no one stopping him and everyone just running away. Or like, no, I think actually he'll just get dove. People will just zone him off. Like, I think, unfortunately, it will be a bad day to be a superstar player who's on a team that maybe isn't as cohesive,
Yeah, I think you're probably right. So I have an interesting question for KuKi. When you played League and when you played Overwatch, do you think which is more focused on the team? Is it by that I mean, does it matter? Is there more room for individual carry performances in League of Legends or in Overwatch? Is team play more important in League or Overwatch?
I think team play is more important here in Overwatch.
Is it because you can't get a bunch of items and carry as you can?
Yeah, that matters too. And I think this game can't be carried by someone like that hard as League of Legends.
Is that because of the Mercy meta, where a really good player can?
No, I think it's not the meta. It's just the game.
Just the game?
Yeah.
Is the meta hurting it? Let's talk about the meta.
Yeah, meta is hurting it too, because I think Mercy is just like making the game boring.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
because you can't keep people dead, right?
Yeah. We just kill him and we know he's gonna be rezzed. Everyone knows he's gonna be rezzed.
Okay. See, the thing for me, Monty, is actually, it's hard for me to know which is which, because here's the thing. On one level, if you're talking about carrying, as in, for example, in League of Legends, if you snowball the game and then your main player, like a mid player, you've seen this happen a million times, has 8 kills and every item, and he's already got max AP. Yeah, odds are, unless you mess up massively, you're almost certainly going to win, because, you have just a way bigger burst damage source than anyone else in the game. So, but at the same time, any game that's like an FPS style game, I can also see how individually you can carry a lot more than you can in League of Legends. Because obviously, if you think from the other side of the equation, right? In League of Legends, if you're the player playing against the guy who's doing all that,
Yep.
You can't do anything. It doesn't matter how good you can be Faker and you'll still
true.
lose the game. So it's a tough one because it depends. And I would say the other factor, but I think a very positive factor for Overwatch, is I feel like a big flaw of League of Legends for being a competitive esports game, because obviously it wasn't designed that way. It was made to just be a fun game to play yourself, is that the snowball factor actually I think makes it really tough to watch. Because when someone is very, very far ahead in the game with gold and items and kills, you kind of know, like, there's no logical way that they can lose unless they also make some big mistakes. Whereas what I like about games like Counter-Strike and Overwatch is in Counter-Strike, you get new rounds, and eventually I'll have the same money you do to buy the weapons that you have.
Right, because there's an anti-snowball mechanic that gives you lost bonus money.
And likewise,
losing.
in Overwatch, even if you completely get team wiped now and I take the point, okay, well, at the next point, you're going to have your ult again, you're going to have all those same weapons. Your machine gun isn't stronger than mine if I'm Soldier. It's identically good. So what's good is these games sort of reset the snowball element, and that way you have to repeatedly prove you're actually better than the other team. You can't just kind of like gain from early advantages and then somehow win later on. You know, you can come back in a better way, I think, personally. Yeah,
I agree. I think the snowball mechanics, it's still there to a certain degree, especially on certain map types like Assault or Control, where if you win the first fight, you have like a big advantage. But you also have, it's easier to do that because you do sort of have an attacker's advantage in those situations because your spawn is always not always, but 90% of the time closer. So when you guys are planning your strategies, so how often do you have KuKi? Do you have strategy talks saying, okay, we want to run this composition on this map versus this team? And how many plans do you have? Do your coaches come to you and say, okay, we have have 3 different styles of attack for this map, and this is the one we want you to use.
We mostly like practice it first in the scrims, and then we choose. Like we try a lot of things. We try like almost every time we scrim different things, and then at the last moment we choose before we go into the game.
But you already have all of your positioning pre-planned and everything like that, and you know how to react to different compositions that they might be running.
Yeah, but we just try it every different time, and we change a little bit about the strategy or the positions and things. Yeah.
So one thing that you can do in Overwatch, so it may not be obvious to the viewers because you can't see it, because we have these rooms backstage called dugouts where the coaches sit, and they have headsets and they can listen to team communication while watching the match. Okay. And you didn't know this? Sorry.
Because by the way, for context, that doesn't exist in League of Legends. As far as I know, they have to get the comms later on after.
No. I think they changed that, so you can do it. Okay, right. Yeah, I think they changed it at least for LCS, where they get the comms now. So what happens is so the dugouts have like 2 PCs where you can observe, and then they have headsets back there where you can listen to the comms and watch the game. So the coaches can listen the entire time, and then there's like a red light on the desk. And all the substitute players sit back there too. And once the red light goes off, so in between maps, the red light goes off and it opens the mic for the coaches.
So it's like a timeout in Counter-Strike where you can talk to the players.
Yes. But it automatically, they flip it so that you can talk between maps. So you don't see the coaches. The interesting thing about Overwatch is you don't see the coaches because they're not going to come on stage and like start talking to the players, but they are talking to the players that entire time. So how much does that help you with changing strategies from map to map? Do your coaches, like, do you feel like it really helps you remember your strategies coming into the next map or fixing mistakes?
Yeah, but in stage, the coaches don't literally talk about the strategies a lot. They just like talk of something about the massive mistakes or something we're missing or we should do. They talk about them, but they don't like talk for 5 minutes about strategies or things. They just like try to tell us the mistakes or massive things and try to cheer us up.
Okay. Was it helpful in the one map you lost to be cheered up? Were you super sad? I don't even know if you were playing that match. You weren't playing against Dallas. So they were cheering you up even though you've won. You personally, KuKi has won every map KuKi has played.
Yeah, I did, and I was lucky.
So what you're saying, yes, I'm sure it was very lucky. It was all luck.
Yeah.
But so they set the strategies beforehand then, so you know all the strategies, so it's mostly just fixing mistakes in the strategies rather than changing them a lot during the game itself.
Yeah. We might change it a lot if we like are losing so badly or something, but we mostly don't change that a lot. We just try to cover our mistakes or big problems.
Okay. So another team that you're going to play this week, and a team that has been doing very badly in the Overwatch League, is the Shanghai Dragons. Now, when you were in Korea, did you ever used to scrim against Chinese teams?
I had an opportunity to scrim with Chinese team when I was in APEC, when I was in MVP space.
Yes.
Yeah, I tried a lot with the Chinese team, but they were all not bad.
That's good.
Okay, so one of the things that's been weird about, when we look at Shanghai teams and we saw, Miraculous Youngster has played very well against teams like Lunatic High, and they had a big league, in their own region, and they had a lot of good players. They were doing well at the Overwatch World Cup. It's very weird that the Chinese team is like the worst team in the league, and not by like a little, like they are the worst team by like a lot. So What do you think after playing the Chinese teams? Was there something you noticed in their style? Because they had a very different style of playing Overwatch than the Korean teams or the Western teams.
Yeah. I think individually they are very good because we have been screaming them and we see them in the competitive. Individually they are very good, but I think they have just a little problem in their teamwork or something. I'm not sure.
Well, I think they have a lot of problems, yes, in their teamwork. When you played against not this team but other teams, did you think of the same thing of other Chinese teams? Did you think, when you practiced against them at APAC, did you think, they don't have great teamwork but they're very individually skilled?
Yeah, they're individually skilled, and I thought that they mostly play with their DPS. They like, we play like they have all the roles in the tanks role, the supports role, but Chinese team look like they're just trying to make our DPS carry the game.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the main difference I thought with the Chinese team.
Okay, that's interesting because actually that's a famous thing about Chinese League of Legends, that even to this day they're still obsessed with the AD carry, and the entire team just tries to make the AD carry the game because they think it's Dota, even though it's not. It's League of Legends, very different game. And if you haven't noticed, Chinese League of Legends mid lane's pretty good. I'd start focusing on that if you have any time. Okay, what about have you scrimmed all the teams in the Overwatch League so far? Do you think you've played against everyone by now?
I think so. Almost all the teams, I think.
Okay, because one of the teams I wanted to ask about, because I think they're quite an interesting team actually, is the Philadelphia Fusion. What do you think about this team?
They're very good.
In what way, though?
I can't like find the real unique thing about them, but they were very good.
Okay. What did you think of them, Monty? Because on the one hand, they beat Shock, but then somehow they managed to lose to the Gladiators in that super close series. So where do you put them at?
Well, I just don't think their teamwork is there yet because they came in so much later than everybody else, and there are all these players from a lot of different teams coming through. So I think on an individual level, they're all really talented. I mean, obviously, you look at that roster and you say, wow, Carpe, Shadowburn, these guys are great players on an individual basis, but they don't really have a style right now. Each player is playing their own style, and Carpe and Shadowburn are used to playing like sort of this flanking style where they go really deep. And they're coming off their supports. It's like these are new guys to the roster. You look at Poco and Fraggy; they haven't played together beyond like practicing in Europe before the Overwatch League started. They weren't on the same team. Poco was on Gamers Origins. Fraggy was on Giganti. So I think it's interesting. I do think Poco and Fraggy right now have a very weird way of playing. I'm curious. Have you watched Fraggy play a lot, KuKi? Because he plays really weird for a Winston player.
Yeah, I've seen him a lot, but I think the communication between the DPS and Winston is very important. But I think there's some problem, maybe.
Yes, I agree. Because a lot of time Fraggy will just like die instantly because it doesn't seem like he's getting a lot of help, or he dies himself. But one thing Fraggy does that's very weird. Have you noticed this when you watch him play KuKi? So what he does is he like crouches, and then he like sneaks around the side, and he'll literally just walk into the enemy team and then save his jump. So he'll just like secretly like walk into the flank, and sometimes he dies instantly. But have you noticed this about his play, that he does very weird things on Winston that not many other players do?
But that's like sneaking around without a jump, and you can get to the back line. It's actually really good because you can save your jump, and you have extra jump for you.
Yes.
But if you die, that doesn't mean anything.
Well, but see, the problem is that yes, you can jump back to your team or jump on their supports, but your team has to know when you're going to be walking into them, because otherwise you will just die. Because if you get if you get focused really fast, it can be difficult. So with I want to talk about London a bit. Have you watched a lot of London's matches?
Yeah, I think I watched all of their matches.
So they have been doing some really weird strategies. You know, they play like Torbjorn Reaper defense on Dorado.
I haven't seen that match, I think.
It was their last match this week. But they like to play Reaper Roadhog attack on Junkertown.
Oh.
Right?
Yeah.
Which nobody else does. So what do you think about London's strategies? Because they sort of, right now, with all the Reaper play, they sort of just run into you. Like you said, they're very aggressive, and you see that Prophet just walks up with Reaper and starts killing all your tanks.
I think Reaper's really good at this meta, but not so many teams are using Reaper.
Do you say that just because you play Winston and Reaper like one-shots you?
I don't know why. I don't know the reason, but just felt that Reaper was really good, and sometimes we use it too, and we feel it that Reaper is really good. I don't know the reason though.
Is this what your coaches tell you?
No, it's just like what I felt.
Mm-hmm.
Is Spitfire the hardest team to play?
Excuse me?
Is Spitfire the hardest team to play?
I don't know. Every team is really hard.
I don't know about that. I'm gonna have to call that question. Every team. Here's the thing, KuKi. Each team has good qualities, and some of them have good players, and a lot of them try very hard and practice a lot. But in no universe is the Shanghai Dragons as hard to play as London Spitfire, right? We can acknowledge that, surely.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, right, good. We got that out of the way. Okay, we were one step closer to some real trash talk. Okay.
I don't know. They're very good teams in the league. I think I can say most of the teams are really hard. You've seen our matches; they were very close, and we really think that most of the teams are really tough to us.
If we take the 3 Korean teams out of this question, so we forget for a second about Seoul and New York and London, and we just look at all the other teams in the league, which of the other teams is the best of that group?
I think Houston
Outlaws. Okay, why?
Yeah. They are really good. They got good players, and as he said a lot, Jake was really good.
Isn't Linkser the best DPS player on that team? I mean, he is legit.
Yeah, Linkser is good too, and I think all of them are really good. Individually, all the players are really good, and they got great teamwork. I think Houston's really good.
Okay, what do you think about Houston, Monte?
I think Houston looked a lot better this week when they actually settled on a definitive lineup, and we didn't see them swapping nearly as much as they had in previous weeks, which, I mean, they were winning some maps convincingly, but then they would make swaps that didn't seem to make a lot of sense, and I think would downgrade the skill of the roster. And Muma, coming out of his interview, said that he thought it was important that they sort of stuck with this core of 6 players and really got to work on that before they added some more variables in there. So I think this starting core of like Jake, Muma, Cool Matt, Raucus, Banny is like solid, and they should continue to use that.
Okay, because I mean, this week they've got, in theory, an easier schedule. They've got Florida Mayhem and they've got LA Gladiators. So do you expect them to win both games?
Yes, I definitely do. I think after they pummeled Dallas last week, it really wasn't that close of a match, that they're going to be on a roll. I think their weaknesses are that Jake still, besides Junkrat, his Soldier 76 is still solid. But I think that they do have some hero pool problems, especially if like Linkser is responsible for playing. Jake did play some Genji this last week, and it was good. But Linkser is still both the best Tracer and the best Genji player on this team, which means that it's harder to run both simultaneously. Jake does have a history back to LG Evil of playing Genji, but he's never been like a top Genji player. Okay. So that might still be an issue. Like I still see some And Coolmat really doesn't play anything besides Diva. So there's sort of that problem as well. I'd like to see, we have seen some Roadhog, but again, I worry that this roster doesn't have the biggest flexibility at the moment.
Okay. KuKi, do you think that Houston's going to beat the Gladiators?
I'm not sure, but I think, I think so.
Okay.
Houston's...
What do you think of, what were you going to say? What was the reason why?
Because Houston's really good.
That'll help you win games. I agree. Okay. What do you think about LA Gladiators though? Because they seem like quite an unusual team. Not the biggest names, you know.
You played them.
Yeah,
we
you played
them
against them. What do you think of that team?
They were really good too.
Okay, right. Let me just clear this up, okay, KuKi. We know all these teams are good in your view, so just don't say that part, right? We'll take that for granted that every team's good, right? Just tell us the part about what you think about them. More about their style or their players, and just not about how good they are. We understand they are good in the most vague sense possible. Yes.
But to be honest, like I think we just think about the Korean teams a lot.
Yes.
We have to concentrate on the games we have with them.
Aha. Aha.
We're and getting then sometimes do a little bit of practice for these Western teams. Yeah.
It's just my thoughts. I don't have like much time to think about other teams.
See, this is inadvertently some straight fire trash talk. You don't know it, but this is sick. Yeah.
All right, that's good.
I like that.
Yeah. Okay. Nope, you said it.
No, that's the polite way to do it. Yes, you did a great job there. Okay.
That was an excellent quote. Okay.
Well, what about this then? What do you think of the Gladiators using Doomfist? Are you surprised more teams don't use this?
Yeah, hydration using Doomfist.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think it's usable for them because they're really good at it.
Why don't we see Korean teams using it?
I think they're gonna use it sometime, but it's just because there are more better picks, like Tracer or Widows. They got more better picks.
So you played the match against Gladiators. You personally were in that match. So what did you like when you were playing against them? What did you struggle with? Like, did you find it hard to kill their DPS or to zone them out, or do you remember? Do you remember?
Gladiators?
Yes, the hardest part for you, KuKi.
Maybe at the time he was thinking already about what he's going to do against London Spitfire. You know, he can't be thinking a lot about these Western teams. No, what was it like, KuKi? Come on, tell me.
I don't really remember.
That memorable, right? Okay, well, so.
No, I don't mean that.
Okay. Don't worry about it. It's not your fault. Listen, it's the job of the other teams to make the games memorable for you. Your job is just to win the game. So you did that. Well done. That's your part of the job done. You know, I mean, I wouldn't remember either if there's a load of kills just going on the top of the right-hand corner of the screen. Well, okay, let me ask you this then. So let's see. Let's have a look for what's a good matchup here. Okay, here's one. So the two LA teams are going to play this week. The Gladiators, the team we just talked about, is going to play against Valiant. And Valiant at the moment is 3-1, and their only loss was a very close loss to the London Spitfire. Yeah. So who's going to win out of this game, do you think? Gladiators versus Valiant?
I think Valiant's just a little better because they're just doing really well in the season right now.
Okay.
So they played probably the best match this last week against Spitfire, where they almost won. Really, really close game. Had to go to the fifth map.
What allowed them to almost win then, Monty?
Well, I mean, coming back in those matches, like, I think it's interesting that they won in the control map on Oasis and then came back on Eichenwald as well. I think that right now, we call them a Western team, but they do have 3 Korean players starting.
Half and half. I think we need to start using the term like hybrid team or something. You know, there's got to be some sort of a term that we got to create here. Because it does look like the more Koreans you have, the more you win, Monty. That's really the way it works.
And then they have two French players who always play with Sun and Unko, and then it's like randomly agilities or silk thread, depending on, I think, which hero pool that they're looking for in that game. But it's a lot of veteran players that are coming together and have played together previously, either on the Immortals roster or Rogue itself. So, but they tend to play, I think it was a lot of them finding their sort of style again, because they play very aggressively. And I think a lot of teams don't really realize how agilities will play Genji, because he is one of the most, like, he will just engage you straight up with Dragon Blade in the middle of, like, whenever you're clumped up. So he's very good at noticing when to use it in like choke points, and they'll just go ahead and engage with it right off the bat, like simultaneously with their tanks, instead of waiting for the tanks to distract them or do some damage and then using it to clean up. So they definitely have like a different style of playing the Genji. But they can do other stuff as well, obviously. I mean, they can run the agility as a good Roadhog player, so they have good diversity. They can, Silk Thread has a different hero pool, running more of the like Soldier 76 as well as having the Genji, but he plays Genji more defensively than agility, so you have to consider which Genji player is in the map, which changes, I think, the way you react to the way Valiant's playing. And I think Sun is just an absolute fucking monster. And Sun has some of the best game sense when it comes to stalling the payload or pushing the payload in or back capping. Like, he plays objectives super well.
It clearly is someone who has like no fear in the game when he plays.
Yeah.
Seems like someone no hesitation. It's pretty good.
But Sun focuses on how to win a game of Overwatch, right? He is an objective-based player, first and foremost, where he thinks about, how can I stop this payload from moving? Is it going to be hiding and then coming out and trying to stop it? Is it going to be killing this one person so I can stay on the payload for as long as I can? Or is it going to be, hiding after the fact, like we saw against Dallas, and sort of just like sneaking around and just pushing it in himself? I mean, we've seen him do that over the course of his career many times. So I think Sun is one of the best Tracer players, because he is thinking always about, how can I capture this point? How can I capture the payload? Not how do I kill the other Tracer?
Well, here's the fun thing, though, Monty, is that it's not until week 5, so 3 weeks from now, that Valiant plays another Korean team, because obviously they've played already against Spitfire. So they're going to be playing against the Seoul Dynasty on February the 7th. And what I like about that is everyone's got their legs under them at that point in time. That's a match where you can't be like, oh, we caught them on the first map of the season, If they're actually as good as they look, then will be the real test, right?
Yeah, and I think it's important to note, too, that Valiant have had probably the hardest schedule so far. I mean, it's just been ridiculous. Like, they've had to play both or 2 of the 3 Korean teams and the Dallas Fuel. Their only easier match was against the San Francisco Shock. So this is a team that's probably going to have, be contending for a top slot towards the end of this stage. And it could be a really consequential match for the obviously the big money and the potential playoffs towards the end.
Sure. Okay. So there's a team, if we're going to talk about Western teams, there's a team we have to talk about that had an interesting week, Monty, which was the Florida Mayhem. Because here's the thing. They played against Seoul Dynasty.
KuKi played in that match.
Okay. What did you think about this match? And no, I don't care that they are a good team. I just want to know what you thought about the actual match, please, KuKi.
And
against Florida Mayhem.
You should remember something about your match that you played this week.
They were the Swedish guys who were sort of memeing a lot, and then you 4-0'd them. Am I jogging any memories here?
I just forget everything when I end the match.
Okay, right. See, that's the secret, Monty. A lot of people, when they come out of a game, if they win, they get to their ego. If they lose, it haunts them, What he does is, the Seoul Dynasty team just has a memory wipe completely, except for every game they played against Korean players, and they just think about that all the time. So it allows their brain more space to just think about Korean players. It's a very good system, actually. I think everyone else should employ it,
Yeah, the Men in Black just come with their mind wipers.
Yeah.
After every game, and then you can't say anything that might offend the fans.
No, definitely don't do that. Monty, so I know Florida Mayhem will want to be like, yeah, we got to win this week, and it's like, it was against the Shanghai Dragons. Like, this is still looking bad, isn't it?
It is looking bad, but what I think is positive for Florida is that Logix is finally playing well on stage. So after having crazy online performances, I think he played really well against Shanghai Dragons. And of course, you can say, well, isn't that just because he played against Shanghai? But the answer is no. I can tell from his mechanics and everything that he looks more comfortable on stage now. He's hitting more of the shots that we're used to having him hit, or like landing more of the pulse bombs that we're used to seeing him land. So that was an encouraging sign for sure.
Okay.
I think the most disturbing thing is if Florida is capable of 4-0ing Shanghai, like how much worse is Shanghai?
Right? Yes.
Exactly. So here's the thing. They've already lost to San Francisco and Florida. So who isn't going to put Shanghai in the trash can right now? And not in a small way either. It's not like, oh, Shanghai was playing these really close matches.
Yes.
That's really the disturbing part, I think, is how much worse they are than the rest of the league.
The thing is, when you play against Shanghai Dragons, you're not actually playing against Shanghai Dragons. It's like, certain sports, Monty, like, for example, rally car driving. You don't actually drive against the other drivers. You don't drive on the same track. What you do is you both take a turn to go over the same track, and then you see who gets the best time on the track. That's what playing against Shanghai Dragons is like. You won, obviously. The question is, how much did you win? How many unique heroes did you use? And how much did you style on them? Because if you did a really good job doing that, or you could just go the other way, you could just cruise to a victory, thinking the whole time about the New York Excelsior, about how you're going to beat them next week, and how you love the Chinese fans and cheer for me, please. I'll show good games. That you could also just think that inside your head, right? Not naming any names though, just anyone who might think something like that when they were playing such a game. Okay.
See, I just like to think that KuKi, whenever he's playing a game now against Florida, he's just imagining, Logix. He's like, this McCree is Pine, and I'm only thinking about Pine while I'm killing Logix.
And then he's like, it's weird. Pine is dying very easily in this game. I expected more from Pine. Right? Okay, well, weird game from Pine. Right? Okay. What teams haven't we talked about? I think we talked about almost everyone. Let me have a look. Oh, I don't think I asked you, Monty. So what were actually your thoughts about the Gladiators?
I think Gladiators are like a solid middle of the pack team. It's hard because, well, I think it's weird that they are using Surefour on Tracer this week instead of running Asher, because as I understood it, part of the Gladiators' plan for adding a dedicated Tracer player to the team was to not have Surefour play the Tracer. So it's kind of strange to see him go back to that. I think Hydration is a pretty underrated player. Actually, I think as far as quite good, and I've been impressed. They're a team that I think clicked faster when it comes to teamwork compared to other people, and their supports are probably the strongest part of this roster with Shaz and Big Goose right now. But I don't know how this team gets better, if that makes sense, right? I'm not sure what their ceiling is because they've already shown some pretty good coordination and interesting strategies. But how is this team going to improve to, say, the Valiant level? I don't know how that is theoretically possible without adding different players to this roster.
Okay. Like KuKi, one team we haven't talked about is the Boston Uprising. And they were a team where a lot of people, when they saw the team was put together, were like, well, what a weird team, It's not that many big names. It's not kind of like superstar players. But people said on past episodes of this show that in scrims, they were actually, better than people thought. They haven't had a great week recently. Basically, the only team they've beaten in the 2 weeks is the Florida Mayhem. They narrowly lost to Shock, but then, Shock isn't necessarily the top team. What do you think of Boston Uprising? What's this team been like?
Boston is a really good team, but recently their performance was not that good than the previous rounds, I think. I think they have some problem too. I'm not sure what problem they're having, but recently I think they have some problems right now.
Did they do well in scrims against you before Overwatch League?
Before, with Boston before?
Yes.
Yeah, we had, but yeah, they were really good. What made them good when they played you? Because, for example, one thing that has surprised me is Dream Casper can play many, many different heroes. So he was not known for playing many heroes before. So do you think it helps out their strategies because they can play many different strategies against you?
Yeah, of course, because the pools we can choose is like one big strength of the team, because we can change a lot and we can like try all of the strategies you want to.
So let's talk about Gamsu then, because Gamsu was a tank. He was a good tank on a not so good team in Conbox. Just like you. You were a good tank on a not so good team with MVP Space. So are you surprised to see Gamsu here? What did you think about Gamsu when he was playing in Apex?
He was really good. He was just unlucky.
Unlucky with his teammates. But now that he is on Boston and he is making a lot of big plays, when you play against Gamsu,
some would say still unlucky with his teammates.
Some would say not as lucky as KuKi. But when you play against Gamsu, what is his style compared to your style of playing Winston?
I'm not sure, but I think he was most compared to me, he was like most similar to me.
Okay.
The style was similar to me, but I think it changed during the season. During like past the Apex, he was similar, but during the season we changed a lot. He changed and I changed, and now I'm more aggressive than he is. I think so.
So he's still playing the more zoning style, you think, and you have changed your style a bit?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Monty, what do you think about the Boston Uprising? Because I know, because they played that game against Shock that was like super close, and I saw certain people from Shock who were like, yes, we won the game, and I was like, come on, man, that was, it wasn't really a meeting of the time. I understand wins are wins, but come on, like, this didn't look like a very good week for Boston.
Here's the thing, I have not seen these games yet because last night I had to leave the studio during those games to go meet Seoul for dinner for that filming, so I have to go back and watch those.
You were too busy thinking about Korean teams.
I was too busy thinking about Korean teams.
So you take the same approach, copying your favorite region, right, Monty?
That's very true. So I will watch those games, but unfortunately, because we're filming like the morning after I went to dinner with them, I actually haven't seen those. So seen those the last.
Did you watch the Seoul Dynasty versus Boston though?
Yes, I did. In fact, watch that game.
What did you think of them?
Well, I was casting that game, as a matter of fact.
Sure. So what did you think? Because here's the thing, okay, without joking, I actually feel like when you're a team like Boston, who probably isn't going to beat Dynasty, it's almost the reverse of what I said about the Shanghai Dragons thing. You're probably not going to win the game, but the question is, how good can you look not winning the game, if you know what I mean?
So I think Sideshow and Reinforce did a very good job of breaking down a lot of those plays on the desk. And what I thought was really cool about the way that Seoul was playing was, if you think about maps like Junkertown, so they were catching the dive basically. And Sideshow did an excellent telestration segment during halftime if you want to go look back at this. But essentially, like, when the dive would come in, what I liked was Wakid was reactively using Junkrat Riptire. So he was waiting for them to dive and Kellex to use Valkyrie, and then the Riptire would come out in the middle of a fight and it would kill their Mercy player, right? It would kill Kellex. So that's different because most teams use Junkrat ult to start a fight. As soon as a team's coming in, they'll use it and try and pick off a support and then force the team to go back and reset the fight. But this time it was Seoul being like, oh, if you're going to dive us, we will just use the Riptire to punish your dive every time. So Seoul would just fall way, way back. They just like retreat. Riptire comes in, kills their supports, and then they engage again and win the fight, which was, I think, a really good read on Boston, because Boston plays a lot of different compositions, but they only play one composition well, and that's Tracer Genji Dive. That is their best composition. And I think Seoul, going into that match, knew that about them and said, we will just wait for them to dive. You're almost smiling, KuKi. Am I saying the right things? Is this your plan? You cannot say your plan. So they came in and dove the team, and then what happened was the Seoul would just back off and then punish them and kill their supports like every fight.
Any of that sound familiar?
No, we were just lucky. We just
obviously yes. Always just lucky.
I always enjoy watching
your. We just used our tire, and they used their Valk, and yeah, we were lucky.
Lucky to hit. Wicked was just waiting there with a rip tire every single time.
I really mean it though, because he said it too. He was lucky. He used his tire, and the Mercy was right in front of him.
Every time.
Not every time, but most of the time.
Like every time.
Most of the time, yes. Couldn't be every time, Monty. Luck doesn't work that way, but most of the time he just got lucky.
Yeah. So what I saw from Seoul though is it was really an interesting matchup because Seoul ran a lot of Junkrat or was trying to play a dive composition as well in these matches, except they were just doing it better. So then they forced Boston to not play dive also. Which is Boston's best, and then Boston did even worse as a result. So it's they couldn't beat Seoul's Tracer Genji with their own Tracer Genji, but then they tried to do other strategies and tried to switch things up, like having Dreamcasper on McCree, so they were playing McCree Tracer, but then they did worse. And it was they got worse and worse and worse as the match went on, and they tried to play Dreamcasper on the Pharah. That didn't work out for them either because Fleta was on the far on the other side. So it seemed to me a lot of the time Seoul was intentionally matching their compositions. So they were just playing basically exactly the same style of composition and just beating Boston by being better every time.
Okay. Right, there's one more game I actually had that I wanted to ask you about. I thought this was a good one to talk about, which is the Dallas Fuel versus the San Francisco Shock. So Monty, what do you think of this matchup?
Coming in, I think this is absolutely must win for Dallas. You look at their matches into this next week. They play Boston. They play San Francisco. If they are not capable of overpowering these mid to lower tier teams, they're in real big trouble, right? Because they've had a hard schedule. They could have been the best Western team basically. Or close to it, and still come out 1-3, right? Effectively, because they played the Valiant as well. So even optimistically, if they were the best Western team after playing two,
the killer was obviously when they lost to the Outlaws. So
yes.
Is it similar? Shock in theory is a step below that. So if they lose now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this is if they lose this match, I don't know what you do. You're going to have to start signing players when the player roster window opens. You're going to have to really think about what you want to do with this team because that's not an acceptable loss. I mean, you can understand with how well the Valiant are playing. Okay, maybe you take that loss now, but it should have been more competitive. Houston played very well against them, but obviously they probably shouldn't have got 4-0'd by Houston. Okay. But they ran different players on that day. It wasn't their strongest roster, I think, and they came back out later that week and did at least play a competitive series against London. So they need to figure out which players are their starting roster, and I think stick with those. And if they don't mess with everything, if they practice this week with the 1 6-man unit, I think they can beat San Francisco and Boston. But they need to commit to that more or less.
Okay. The only thing is, though, if you're looking to sign some players during the break that comes up soon, just don't ask KuKi's for opinion in consulting because he'll just tell you, they're all very good players. You'll be like, yes, I'll sign them. Yeah, right, good.
His cover was already broken because not only by by watching his face while describing that match that they played on Junkertown, could I tell that he was amused by it and he knew their strategy coming in, but that he also remembered it. So I know he has both.
It's weird. Yeah, he should have had a surprised look. Really, did that happen in the game? I don't remember.
No, I described that.
No, he was just looking. He was looking. He was like, "Yeah, we did that shit. I bet we did." Before writing him our trap, exactly as I wanted. And then he was like, "No, just lucky. It wasn't even his honest. It wasn't even his strategy. I wouldn't do that again. Just luck." Right? Okay, KuKi. Who do you think wins this match? Dallas versus the San Francisco Shock. Who's going to win it?
I think Dallas would be better.
Okay. Do they just seem better in scrims than Shock does?
They both were really good, though.
I understand that, but between the two, who was better? In a world in which both conceivably could be very good, who was better?
I don't know who's gonna win, really. I don't know.
Technically, none of us know who's going to win any of these games, KuKi. We're just sort of giving our thoughts.
We actually
and
can't
guessing.
see the future.
Yeah, it's mainly guessing.
It's not actually. We can't do that. I know I'm a caster. It's my job to predict things, but I don't actually. I'm not some sort of shaman that can divine the future. So I just have to think about it and offer opinions.
Then I stopped thinking. I don't have any thoughts.
Jesus Christ.
You went with Dallas. Maybe you'll get lucky. Okay, I've got a question for you. Here's one that you can answer because it's a way to say something nice about a player maybe that people don't think is good. Right? Is there a player in the Overwatch League that when you came to the Overwatch League, you just didn't even know this player? You maybe never heard of him, never played against him, but you played against this player and he turned out to be really good. Can you think of someone who's a good example of that, someone who surprised you?
It was Shaz.
Shaz from LA Gladiators? Cool. Okay.
It was really good.
What impressed you about him?
I think I watched the matches before we played against them, and he was really, really good.
And so what about him was good, KuKi?
His Zen was very good. His Zen was very good
because he gets a lot of kills, because he's good with using his ult. What about his Zen impressed you? Because you had to play against this guy, and I know you were studying him and watching him. Because I know that's what you do. So when you studied him and you said, I'm going to play tank against this player, how did you think you had to play against him? Did you think that he was the big threat? I need to attack him personally, like I need to stop him from dealing damage because he can kill my DPS. What was your plan coming into the game?
Yeah, that was the plan. His aim was really good. He was like killing all the DPS, the Genji tracers, lonely. So I had to stop him.
Okay.
The previous
do you like his hair? He's got that really big hair.
Yeah, I like his hair. Yeah, I like it.
I think you should grow it out like that. You should try and go for that look. Stop doing like the traditional Korean look. Go for just let loose. You're in the West now, mate. You can do whatever you want.
What should I do with my hair?
I think you should go for a mohawk. Do you know what that is? It's where you cut all the hair on the side and it's just in the middle like a dinosaur.
Shaved, and then you have like
the hog. Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that look cool? Isn't Junkrat a bit like that? A bit like him.
I'll try if we win the championship.
There we go. If they win, there we go, Monte.
Yes? You'll get a mohawk.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, you got our hopes up there. Got our hopes up. Okay. But I think we're approaching the end of the episode now. Do you have any parting words for us, KuKi? Any final message for the viewers? Who were all very good people, I assure you.
It was really tough for me, this kind of show.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really tough.
It's okay, thank you.
And it was so hard to choose the words. Because I got some thoughts I want to say, but it was so hard to come in, like, with saying it without like...
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. But you did a good job. Thank you for coming on.
KuKi, do you think I'm a good host? Do you think I'm a good host, mate?
What?
Am I a good host?
Yeah, you too. Yeah.
Yes, good. Thanks. That means a lot.
Host I ever met.
Thank you. That means so much. Okay, right. That's the end. That's the end of the episode. Okay, so KuKi has left the show, but we thought we'd have a little discussion about something that wasn't related to any play in the Overwatch League, but was something I think fairly significant in the Overwatch community, because one of the things that people are going to have to accept is that now that it is a professional league and players are contracted to this league, and even if they're streaming on their personal stream, they are in some context considered representatives of both their team and the league. That's just going to be a fact of, I'm sure they even have to sign something like that when they join the league probably. We had this scenario happen with XQC from the, what team does he play for again?
Fuel.
Dallas, yes, Dallas Fuel. Where he's not someone who's known on his stream to talk some shit and to be a bit of a spicy character, but he had an incident with the Outlaws player Muma,
And this is not the first incident that he's had with Muma, by the way. So I think it's important for people to know sort of the history.
Okay.
Even dating back to like season 0 contenders, when XQC failed to qualify for contenders and Muma qualified, there was like a lot of like Twitter shit talking between them that was going on. Mostly, in my opinion, mostly prompted by XQC, about how he didn't think Muma was a very good tank, et cetera, et cetera. So when Muma came on stage after they beat the Fuel, and even though XQC wasn't playing, and sort of used his like the XQC catchphrase, which is some pretty fire banter in my opinion. Yes. I thought it was some great when he was like, just have one last thing to say, rolled and smoked my doggy, because they just like wrecked Fuel. I thought that was great banter. I thought it was excellent. I think the league needs more of that.
Yes, which by the way is worth pointing out. Like one thing as we discuss this topic is them having a history in talking shit. If they want to make that public, great. Like some players, I'd say just don't. But if you're someone who's that sort of person, cool, do that. Just realize that every time you fire off some banter, you got to be very careful it's understood as banter and stays within certain boundaries. You know, I found that out myself in my own life.
Did you? I didn't know that about you at all. Yes, and I agree. And I think that they're obviously using his silly catchphrase to talk about beating his team,
which is a great way to shit talk, as you said.
It was a great way to shit talk, and that it's like a fun thing for the fans to latch onto, and isn't like a personal attack on somebody's like identity or sexuality or race or nation or anything like that, that could be construed negatively, which is not what XQC did, which is say something about that. That implied that Muma's sexuality was like somehow, a problem or attacking it in some certain way.
Basically, what he did was he said what is quite a common thing to say, which is like, this person can go and suck a dick, right?
Which he says, by the way, like a thousand times a day on his stream.
And the problem he had, very simply, was that if you say that about anyone else normally, right, here's the thing. Even though someone who wanted to really, really try and crowbar it could be like, well, that in itself is somehow homophobic. It's like, it's not really. Like, that's quite well known. That's similar to saying like, well, you're an arsehole or something, It's not really about like sexuality. His problem was he then immediately tied it to sexuality as an afterthought. And clearly, by the way, didn't put a lot of thought into it. Clearly that was the secondary thought that just came into his brain after he said the first thing. And unfortunately, that did make some kind of vague implication that perhaps it's a negative thing to, in fact, be gay, which is obviously, at that point, you're not actually shit-talking anymore. You are just basically, admittedly not on some extreme level, but you are in some ways attacking someone's sexuality. And that should not be part of shit-talking,
Exactly. And I think that it was not like an obvious like slur or anything like that, but it was painting it certainly in a negative light, which I don't think is acceptable. And in a way too, I think he knew that he was introducing publicly Muma's sexuality to a bunch of new people.
Yes, that's another thing you also shouldn't do.
So for example, I watched Muma's stream, and he's pretty, openly gay on his stream, and he's very comfortable with it. But he doesn't have the audience that XQC has, and it's not like Muma's been out there beyond just like occasionally mentioning it, making a big deal out of it. So what XQC also did was open Muma up to a bunch of people who disagreed with the ban against XQC, basically using much stronger language and other hate speech against him, which I think is fucked up. But in a way, like, XQC was also intentionally magnifying that aspect of Muma, which hadn't been very public prior to that, which is also problematic in and of itself.
Well, here's the thing with that. Obviously, he is not responsible for people afterwards choosing of their own volition to say something horrible. Which
is fucked up. Unfortunately, that sucks that it's happening to Muma.
But unfortunately, he obviously did, even if just inadvertently presenting it in some negative way like that, someone who is younger and who themselves wants to now insult the Muma guy might then think, oh, that is the way I will do it. I will now make the fact that I dislike him about his sexuality, which again has nothing to do with shit talking. Like, here's the weird thing. Maybe I should do an article or video on this, because there really are kind of rules to shit talking. Like, for example,
I would love to see Thorin's rules to
here's
shit
the thing.
talking.
even if you don't like the person, you actually should still keep it within a certain kind of boundaries. So, for example, say you talk shit about them, you can talk shit about things they do. That's fine. And by the way, that doesn't include sexuality in this sense, because we're talking about, you can talk shit about the way they choose to play, the way they choose to do things, whatever it might be. You can imply that you don't like that, right? The problem is when you pick things that people can't control, like, for example, their sexuality or the ethnicity that they have or the country they come from. Now you are just actually going outside of the bounds, unfortunately. At that point in time, you're going to not only offend people, but it's sort of justified for them to be offended, right? Because in that scenario, it's like...
There's nothing you can change about that situation. Like, you can't improve it. You can't change the way that you're doing something. It's no longer a critique about somebody's decision.
It's just not fun. Like, how could you really construe that as being fun anymore? You know, if you talk, like, if we're both players and like, let's say I have the worst game ever, right? You could say in that scenario, like, oh, don't be mean to him. No, if we're rivals and I talk shit to you and I have the worst game ever, you definitely should attack the fact that I had the worst game ever and maybe be like, you fucking trash, blah, 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 whatever. That's still... that's not as much fun anymore, but that's still acceptable trash talk in my book, you know. The problem is, you wouldn't then be like, oh, you're total trash. No wonder, because you're ethnicity X or sexuality Y. Like, no, that would be unreasonable. Why are you bringing that into the equation? So that has to be said first and foremost. I will say this. The way this was reported by a lot of people is a classic example of where I think the, like, outrage culture does more harm than good. Because I noticed a lot of the articles didn't even give a transcription of what XQC said. They just said stuff like, he used homophobic slurs. What? If I read that, I would literally assume he was saying some very outrageous stuff like, you know, F this so-and-so and blah, blah, blah. No, like, listen, clearly what he did was bad, but you have to have a distinction here. You can't go from 0 to 60 on this, you know. It wasn't as bad as it seemed. I will say, though, XQC, since that scenario, has shown that he's not a fast learner, and apparently he's going to continue firing salvos out there.
So what did you think about the appropriateness of the punishment? Because another thing we have to talk about in regard to this issue is that now that the Overwatch League has begun, and Blizzard has previously issued, say, you know, a suspension for Defran, which we've spoken about on the show before, for his behavior. But this is the first official Overwatch League punishment. So we have to ask, was it appropriate? Yes. Because this sort of sets the tone for everything coming forward. Now, personally, I think the $2,000 fine.
So explain what the punishment was, because remember, there was two different punishments. There was this team and the league. So we need to talk about the league first. Okay.
So, but the league is the one that matters in terms of setting a standard, because the teams can choose to punish however they want, their own players and themselves, right? Okay. But the league's punishment, I think, is the most significant, because that's the thing that the teams themselves can't control, and nobody outside of, you know, the league operations team and the commissioner can control that. So when we look at this, and also I think,
so what was the league's punishment?
Okay, first off, because we're describing the situation that occurred with XQC, it is also important to note that he did, of his own volition, apologize publicly to Muma for what he said prior to the actual punishment taking effect. So I think you have to keep that in consideration. So based on what he said, a $2,000 fine and a 4-match suspension is, as a first punishment. Now, obviously, if he continues this behavior, you expect the punishments to escalate. And I think that sets a good, solid precedent for this kind of stuff. It's not, I think suspending him for longer than that, given that he did show some initiative to take responsibility for his actions, would be a little bit too much. So I generally thought it was pretty decent. You don't want to go overboard and set too harsh of a standard for this kind of thing. I guess technically the first Overwatch League suspension was Sato on Philly, who was account boosting.
Yes.
But he actually, I thought that one was too harsh. I think that blocking him from playing for 3/4 of the season for that was too much, personally. Yeah.
My thoughts on the suspension were, like, the $2,000, I like that part, because first of all, Like, I think that's actually more significant than not playing in the games. Like, if you hit someone in their wallet, especially if they're a young player like that who's very new in their career, he doesn't have like $200,000 in the bank saved up.
I mean, I think he makes a lot of money from his stream, though, so that may be less significant to him than a player that isn't as big of a streamer.
But that's also a problem, Monty. You can't start taking that into consideration, because that would be considered cruel and unusual punishment.
Yes, I agree.
It has to be the same punishment for everyone, no matter if they're poor or if they're rich. Like, for example, let's say someone didn't make money from their stream, but their dad is a millionaire. You know, we can't just find that guy $200K. You know, so I think $2,000 is a good amount. I think it sends a good message. No one wants to lose $2,000, put it that way. And then secondly, in terms of the 4 games, being as 4 games is 2 weeks. I do feel like that might have been too much. I would have just made it 1 week personally, because to me, if you make it a week, this also depends when it happens, by the way. Like, if it happens halfway through the week, it doesn't necessarily make as much sense. But if you've got a full week where you can't play the games, I would make some sort of ruling if I was Blizzard. Like, you still have to go to the stadium. You have to go and sit in the dugout or with your team. So what I want you to do here is you're going to spend a week, because you can't play, thinking about what you've done. And you're going to think, fuck, like, I'm fucked up. Like, I've got to make sure I don't do this again. Also, maybe in that week, you maybe think, maybe I should do a bigger gesture to show that I have overcome this behavior and there's no hard feelings between me and the other guy. But the problem is, when it gets to 2 weeks, like, I don't know if you've ever had this in your career where you were ill or for some reason you couldn't attend an event. 2 weeks without doing work, that's a long time. Like, that might be too much time, I think. So I don't know. Personally, I just think that a week would be enough. I think you send the message there. And plus, the reason why I also mention it is because I hope that this would be like a sliding scale. Like, a second offense is like, that's like half a season, you know. Like, to me, you should never go from nothing to the biggest punishment. That's a mistake a lot of people make in outrage culture, of thinking, no, but to make everyone not want to do it, we should make it the harshest punishment. No, you should make it an appropriate punishment, you know.
Well, also, I think that was a problem with Riot when they first started setting player expectations in the LCS. Is like banning people like I Will Dominate for like an entire year is just ridiculous. So I think that this is, and again, if XQC continues this behavior, then he needs to be punished. I also, I'd like to know what Blizzard's going to do with the money Riot donates to charity. I think that we'll probably see some sort of announcement about where the $2,000 is going pretty soon.
I mean, by the way, it's obviously up to them what they do with it. But the obvious scenario, by the way, this is another example. I don't know if they're just going to try and let the issue die if you're Dallas Fuel. But this is where, if I'm Dallas Fuel, I would go to XQC and I would try and make it like his own volition as to if he chooses to do this, so that you're not lying and pretending like you did it on his behalf. I would just go and say to him, if you were to say, I will match this, fine, and give it to a special charity for people who are abused gay people or something. I think that would be a bullying charity.
I haven't seen it. Yeah, I'm looking right now. So on the front page of Comp Overwatch, it says there's a highlight. I haven't watched it yet because we've been doing this show, but it says he plans to match the $2,000 fine and donate it to an LGBT group himself.
Perfect, right?
I think that's good. And then, I think that's a responsible way to take this. Some people that I've been talking to on Twitter have brought up maybe community service as being part of this too, which I think is not unreasonable. I don't know if what the rules are about whether the league could technically force something like that, but the Fuel itself certainly could. The team could, which I think might be better, just to, frankly, get him out and away from the stream and the computer for a bit and start to realize that he's part of a broader community, or have XQC do more like community service with possible Overwatch fans or something like that, so that he can understand that he affects a lot of people in this game. Because I think that XQC as a player right now has a very young fan base, and I don't think that I think that a lot of the stuff he does, he doesn't realize is being emulated by a lot of kids, and his behavior is not really acceptable.
Yeah.
So...
And he also clearly has that classic problem that you don't want if you're going to run into issues, which is one of the reasons I've had such problems in my career, is that if you're already someone who comes off as an asshole, or people think you're mean in some way, that's only going to magnify whatever you do when you actually do something wrong. Like, then people are going to bring it up again and again. So unfortunately, in this scenario, like, when I implied that he's continued to sort of Twitter beef with people, none of that was in any way like morally wrong or ethically wrong or should be punished. He's just being an idiot. That's his problem. His problem is he's just one of those young guys who just comes off as a bit of an idiot, but out of ignorance, not out of malice, clearly. I think he actually naively thinks he's in the right in some of these scenarios. But unfortunately, that is, if you stick around and keep streaming more, you might not necessarily run into these problems, but you're gonna build up, essentially the negative feeling towards you from the public is going to be sustained and go longer than if you sort of let it die down now and then come back and then go back to being who you are 2 weeks from now.
Well, and he is very entertaining, and part of the reason why he's entertaining on stream and people like watching him is because he he talks constantly, and he does this in person as well. He's just somebody who is very, very talkative, likes to explain things, tries to have a sense of humor, does these little skits on his stream or whatever, where he's an oddball, he's a weird guy, but he is entertaining, and so but the problem is that because he's talking all the time. And he's trained his brain basically to instantly deliver information to his mouth. He ends up, his internal monologue, which he himself has not thought through, ends up erupting out of his mouth. And so he gets himself into trouble as a result. And I think that because he's lived his entire life, not to say that, again, I think that the big problem that I had was I don't condone what he said at all. And I think he should be punished and was appropriately punished for it. But at the same time, we have to think about this guy's life to this point in time where he's never been responsible for being a figurehead, whether he likes it or not, of the Overwatch community, representing a team, representing the league and the league sponsors. And the jump for him has been huge. It's literally been, I'm a streamer with a few thousand viewers in my own house, playing some Overwatch and talking whatever shit I want, to all of a sudden being part of a vast project that had hundreds of millions of dollars poured into it. And all of a sudden now everything he does is going to be watched and judged much more closely, as it should be, by the way. But this is such a huge leap. But I think to many of the Overwatch League players, it doesn't really seem like anything has changed, right? They're still streaming, they're still behaving in the same way, and so they need to realize, XQC and others, that is no longer, I would argue, it was never acceptable behavior, but now they're going to get hit much harder for it than it was previously.
Sure. Oh, by the way, Monty, you are absolutely, if you of your own volition want to state that you don't condone this behavior, that is fine, but you are in no way obliged to. This is not some sort of Stalinist show trial where you have to stand up and say, I categorically disavow the traitors to the great nation. No, people who act like that, by the way, if you notice what they're doing, they're actually giving away their agenda when they do that. It's no longer you're not allowed to say bad things. You now must say literally what they command you to say, as well as not saying bad things. So no one is obliged to tweet out, I don't condone racism. The default position is you should assume they don't condone it. Until they expressly say something, they have not in any way committed a crime, and no, they are not in league with anyone who is that way. Because actually, I thought you made a very good point, and a very salient point. And this is one of the areas I've come under fire myself. So I'll give you an example. In Counter-Strike Global Offensive, we had a similar scenario, but a little bit, in its own way, a bit more controversial, in its own way, a bit less, where what happened was, I won't mention the name of the player because I don't want to drag that up, but basically a very famous Counter-Strike player got insulted by a random fan, and he's someone who doesn't use Twitter much, this player, right? And he's also from another country, and English is not his first language. And he came onto Twitter, and he said, shut up, and then he said what would be considered a slur, kid, right? And the way he said it made it clear that he wasn't in any way, he didn't understand that this would be taken as, that term means something else in the West. That's considered a discriminatory term. You think you're just saying fucking idiot, basically, go away or whatever. And so unfortunately, when this happened, I also had a tweet along the lines of yours where I sort of said, yes, while that's clearly not acceptable and he represents this team, let's be compassionate. In this case, I said to the fact this is someone who comes from a different culture, who doesn't necessarily understand what things mean in our culture, and also is speaking in a second language. Now, when I said this, I was attacked quite similarly to you. People saying, oh, so you agree with that sort of behavior? Oh, no wonder you would think that's good. You probably say that thing, which I've never said ever in my entire life in any public context. It should go without saying. And by the way, that's the case because you'd see it tweeted to you 20 times a day, Monty. So we all know that evidence doesn't exist. If the evidence is not there, you must acquit Thorin. So in that scenario, the point I'm making, though, is I think that's a very important thing for people who are leaders and community influencers to do, which is to point out that, yes, when people fuck up, yes, they should have a punishment. There should be consequences. Absolutely. But that shouldn't allow everyone to get whipped up into some fever where they just hate on the guy massively. And then one thing I really am disappointed by is people who imply there should be no compassion for people who fuck up. What a stupid notion. If your brother fucked up, would you be like, oh, sorry, for that, you are no longer my brother. We will never respect you and speak to you again. You are banished for it. No, you would be like, you know what? You fucked up, but you're still my brother. You got to get your shit together. Like, listen, if you're going to get a lot of hatred, obviously I'll support you through that. Don't agree with what you did still, but you're still a person. And because you're a person and people can fuck up, you can be rehabilitated and come back into the fold. I think that's actually even a more positive way to rehabilitate people than telling them they're monsters,
Well, of course it is. And also, I think it's weird that people don't think that people can change as a result. And if they are punished for something and they realize that their actions have ramifications, or even if they previously they had never encountered somebody from another culture or anything like that, that they wouldn't necessarily also realize that they had hurt these people and feel bad about it and want to change their behaviors, right?
That part is the most significant detail to me, is that sometimes when you say something, you might actually have not in this case, but you might actually have a justification as to why you said it. But you know what? When you actually find out it hurt someone legitimately, sometimes you do think, you know what, even if actually what I said was fine,
was an asshole and I'm not going to do that again.
I'm not happy about the fact that was, I apologize for the offense that it caused you. But I think it's a polite thing to do.
Like, I just think that I personally believe that at a fundamental level about human nature, that people are capable of changing, and that people are fundamentally good in the way that I mean good as we are biologically programmed to live in functional societies where we respect each other and can have empathy towards other people's emotions and sort of well-being. And I think what confuses me when people are so quick to condemn others for any reason whatsoever, going well beyond what the specifics that we're talking about right now, is that it shows that they, at a certain level, that they fundamentally believe that people are like corrupt, or like some people are just like irredeemable, right?
Well, that's actually why I find it really dangerous to use labels. Like if you say, oh, this person is a homophobe. No, we have no evidence to suggest that based on how he's lived his life.
Yeah, all we have is one homophobic instance, right?
Well, all we have at the moment is, at least I don't know what he's done in the past, but all we have at the moment is a comment, which actually, if you even look at the nature of the comment, doesn't seem like he explicitly thought, right, I'll hurt this person and insult them because they're gay. Yeah, it's probably borderline on that one, So as a result, you have to give people the benefit of the doubt. In this scenario, you say, right, well, unfortunately, that is the way everyone's going to take it, mate. And so you can't say that. And by the way, don't even go into that territory anyway. It's just, there's nothing good can come of it. And also, the other person, since he is your rival and he doesn't like you either, is probably going to take that as an offensive statement, mate. He's probably going to be hurt by that. So if you add all this together, it's a pretty reasonable statement. The problem is, if you say the person is a homophobe, to me, a homophobe is someone who actively hates gay people. They don't want gay people to have rights. They maybe even don't want them around them. We have no evidence to suggest that is what this person is like. He said something that could be considered homophobic. Yes. There's a big difference though, right? There's a big distinction to be made there.
Right. Yeah. And that's like, I think that it's unfortunate that obviously not everybody, but that some people are quick to take an instance of what I think this one could be definitely construed as homophobia. And that's the reason why I don't agree with what XQC did. And I think that he should be punished for it. But it's different to take that and then say that every action of his is driven by this belief structure and that he's incapable of learning from this instance and changing his behavior or the way that he thinks, or opening his mind to new ways of understanding or new opportunities. So, and again, it all depends on how he behaves in the future. Maybe he won't change at all. Maybe this is just who he is, and he has no interest in changing. He has no interest in learning about other things, and he's going to continue to make mistakes. And then
he will suffer the consequences.
He will suffer the consequences of it, right?
Exactly.
But I think that what I don't like is immediate witch hunting before the punishment is known, because when I saw this blowing up, we didn't know that he was going to publicly apologize immediately. We didn't know how the league's punishment was going to come down. We didn't know how his team's punishment was going to come down. We didn't know how he would, how all of this would happen. So I think we have to wait until all of these things conclude before we can say, was this an appropriate punishment for the occasion? And perhaps we shouldn't all bandwagon when this happens immediately. I think you have to reserve judgment for a while.
Also, another couple of things. One is that first of all, people, funnily enough, it's the people who always get outraged, love the term inclusive. They love that term, which means that everyone gets to be involved. Well, let's use that term properly. That means that when people make fuck-ups like this, that are either, maybe they make an off-color joke, so social faux pas, maybe in this case they actually offend someone with what is deemed to be unacceptable comments. Well, if they do show remorse, and they accept their punishment and they deliver on what they are demanded of them, then we are inclusive. They can come back into the fold. They have served their time. They are now free to live their life again. This is not something that should be held over this guy's head forever. And it's especially not. This is one thing I've always had a problem with. I do understand that you should have consequences to what you say, but the fact that this guy said a horrible insult to someone else doesn't justify people who don't know either of them saying horrible insults to either of them. Like, it doesn't make any sense for everyone to pile on and say, you're the biggest piece of shit ever. That doesn't make sense either. Now you're being horrible. Now you're promoting a negative attitude in gaming if you do that, you know. I know it's a temptation because you see something horrible happen, but you piling on doesn't help in this scenario. As we're talking about, there's punishments coming down the line. Yeah,
and I think that we can agree that none of us want a homophobic, racist, sexist society. That's obviously like a terrible outcome. So what you're saying is true, is that if the people who displaying these traits can be convinced not to do them and understand why they shouldn't be performing these actions, then they should be welcomed back, because that's the kind of society that we're looking to build.
Yes. And especially when it comes to the public outward face of your team and your league. Like, whether or not you're someone in your life and your little niche and little clique of people who said those things, even if you did, don't ever say them in public. Don't say them in public. Don't say them in jokes. Just don't say them in any context publicly, because it doesn't matter that to you it's acceptable or to your little clique you didn't think it was a big deal. The whole world is watching now, and you have to consider that. I know you can't, listen, I'll say this, you can't do that every second of the day. You can't have that in your mind all the time. It's too hard. No one can do that. But just as a general guideline for behavior, it's something everyone should probably, hopefully learn from. And therefore, the next guy who might make a mistake like this maybe doesn't, because he sees what happens here.
Yeah. I think it's a really complex situation. And I think that it's unfortunately, I think it's been handled pretty poorly by the fans on both sides of this. But I think that when we talk about the way that the team handled it, and we didn't get back to this yet, but Dallas, suspending him for the rest of the stage, I think that's their prerogative. If they're not happy with their players' performance,
it's their team, and obviously they have enough players, so they can. That's another factor. It's not like they have to play him. The problem with that one is, like, listen, I can only give my opinion on what I think about that. Whether it's the right move or not, well, Hastro decides that's his team, and he owns the team. It's up to him whatever the fuck he wants to do with the team. So if he wants to never play him again, that's his choice. But I do think the whole season is a bit too much, personally. I think
it's just the whole stage. It's just the whole stage. So it's it's six matches instead of 4.
Oh, that's not as bad. I thought it actually said for the whole season.
No, just the stage. So it's 6 matches instead of 4. So
in that case, I understand why he did that.
He increased the match suspension by 50%.
Yes. So basically, the point of what Hastro has done there is exactly what you just said there. He's purposely said, right, well, I want to give her my own punishment. Therefore, since he's already got this punishment, I'm going to add a little bit extra on top and add 2 more games. So, okay, I can understand that.
By the way, knowing Hastro too, as I do, I promise you that nobody was as mad about this as this guy, Hastro is, because this is like, Hastro is like a deeply ethical person. And so having his team do this, like one of his players do this, is against everything he believes in. So I'm not surprised that he would take it to take the punishment even further.
Sure. And by the way, I will just say this as well. Unfortunately, this is another factor. Like, I don't blame pros. You can't, again, think of this every second and somehow edit what you're about to say in your brain. But unfortunately, at the moment, gaming, and particularly Overwatch esports, is under attack by people who are looking for any excuse to write articles which imply that gamers are, insert the pejorative term, divisive, hateful, xenophobic. People are looking for this excuse. So if you are a pro player, you aren't just representing the league and the esport. You're representing esports, actually. And unfortunately, even though I can tell you it is categorically, scientifically a lie that this represents the majority of gamers or some deep-seated horrible behavior, that's not the case. If you ever look into these scenarios, it's like that famous thing, the Pareto principle, where something like a 20th of a situation, 20% of like peas, for example, 20% of the shoots of peas end up producing 80% of the peas that come out of the shoots. So even though you have another 80% of shoots, they don't actually produce as many peas. And likewise, if you look in like animals, 20% of the males procreate with make 80% of the children or something. The point here is it's a very small amount has a massive impact on the overall thing. That's what's happening here, is there are a very small amount of people who are xenophobic, who are hateful in some way. And that's because that's like that in all cultures of people. You could find probably a very similar distribution between the entire American culture, I'm sure. The problem in this scenario is the things they say are going to ring out so loudly that people who come from outside, especially people with a certain agenda, are going to say, look, gamers are all just, they hate women and they hate minorities and they hate other sexualities. That is not the case at all. But unfortunately, realize that that's some damage that you will unfortunately do to esports if you engage in this behavior as a public figure. Because now people will use you as an example to say, right, look, even a public figure's done it. This is one of the reasons why I myself, first of all, even more so regret things that happened in my past. And then secondly, always fight against the notion that somehow I represent that in game. I don't at all. And I totally stand against those things because unfortunately that's a problem that gaming has as a bigger, wider issue.
Yeah, and I think it is important that just to make sure that people know that we're talking more about some of these, these issues as they're occurring right now. And I think there's a very interesting and much larger topic to discuss about. For example, we've seen a lot of these articles in Overwatch recently about why aren't there women participating in the Overwatch League, and I think that's a very complex issue that goes back to how women are treated in gaming in the broader sense, right? I think it's really complicated. So it's just important to remember that a lot of these comments and contexts take a lot of unpacking throughout not only esports, but through the entire gaming industry. And it's never as simple as it sounds. And really nobody can know the reasons behind a lot of this. And I do think at a fundamental level that gaming does need to change to be, less derogatory.
I think it's more that people need to change, mate.
Yeah, that'd be great, right?
I'm sure in like China, where they have an entirely homogenous society, there's not a lot of mad racism to like people from other countries. There's probably not that many who are actually playing the game, So it depends where you're from. It depends what culture you are. Every culture is hopefully trying to improve. And in this particular scenario, as you're trying to outline here, it's not that, like, here's the problem. People go so hard one way or the other. They either say, like these people writing these articles in mainstream gaming websites, look, it's just proof that gaming has this sick underbelly where loads of them are misogynist. No. But at the same time, don't go the other way. And just because that's bullshit, don't say there is none. Well, no, right, obviously,
there's no problem.
If you get a big enough group of people, there will be some people in it who either are misogynists or display misogynistic antisocial behavior. Definitely, it will happen. The problem is, and this is the distinction that is the key distinction, how much of it is there, and is there a way we can encourage it to stop or to change and do something more positive? That's a great discussion to have. Unfortunately, neither of the other discussions are productive in any sense. To say there's no problem is just to cover your eyes to it, and to say that it's a problem everywhere and therefore everyone who plays the game is at fault is ludicrous. So let's instead have the other discussions, and hopefully this sort of unfortunate, unacceptable incident will not spark the negative repercussions I said there, which again no one could have anticipated, which is that people will cast Overwatch League or Overwatch or esports in a negative light, in a sense that I think is very unfair.
Yeah, and I would like to see more articles about what are some systems that could theoretically be implemented to change some of these, realities that we're facing right now, rather than just pointing out that they exist or I mean, in some of these, it's just like, it's very strange. I don't want to get.
I'll give you an example.
I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole. I really don't.
I'll give you a very, very quick example, right, of what the issue here is. For me, it's the exact same problem that happens with gun control issues in America. And what I'm going to say is this, okay? Anyone who thinks that either is 100% correct is clearly wrong. Anyone who thinks that like guns should be totally legal, there should be no that's ludicrous. At the same time, just because there are restrictions doesn't mean that it's the perfect system now. But you notice, the reason why I brought this issue up is, it's only ever brought up as an issue for people to use either of those two extreme scenarios as their political agenda. So when there's a horrible thing happens, someone says, that's why there should be more control to stop all guns. Or the other person says, yeah, but that shows that if people have guns, they could have saved the people. People just use what's a horrible incident for their own agenda. Whereas the real discussion that would be an amazing discussion to have would be, for example, to what degree should we allow guns? What causes people who have guns to do horrible things? These are great discussions to have that could actually be productive,
No,
so
unfortunately, we never have those.
Right?
We never have those discussions
sadly,
because the only discussions ever happen after some tragedy, right?
Yes, but actually along these lines, I will be producing some content. It's not done yet, so I'm not going to say who's involved, but I'm actually going to do some content along these lines of trying to show the experiences of people who were in minority groups or who felt as though it was difficult to get into gaming. And it's just going to be hopefully to enlighten people by just showing them what someone's life experiences is. It's not to peddle any kind of an agenda. People will make their own conclusions. But my idea is the sort of person who, yes, understands that, yes, not everyone's misogynistic. If they hear the experiences of some women who've been gaming, they might at least think, oh, well, I see certain areas where it is harder for women, or they've had different challenges than I have. Hopefully, at least that way, people can take on board everyone's experiences. So I do have that as a goal in the future.
That sounds very good. I look forward to watching it.